Hey, what is up, mortals? It is TC Crew here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 6 of What If Deku Had Divine Dividing. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So we begin.
I'm doomed. There's no point in denying it.
Izuku looked up from his lunch, his attention now focused on his classmate, who sat directly across from him at the table, not touching his own meal. Rather, Tetsu just sat there with his hands running through his hair as he stared wide-eyed into empty space. His expression looked like he had just seen all of his worst nightmares come to life, combining themselves in order to throw the steel-hardening hero in training into a new level of terror. Midoriya was not the only one to notice this, as several of the other people who sat there looked on with concern.
Sir Tetsu, come now. There's no need to be overly dramatic. It's only the second day of school and... That's just it. It's only the second day of school and I'm already feeling lost. The classes here are harder than... Look, I barely passed the written portion of the exam. I had to guess over half the questions. I think I understood some of the stuff they told us in class, but only bits and pieces here and there, and it's only going to get harder as the year goes on. How am I going to pass the finals? Oh man, they're going to kick me out!
That got a hum out of one of the last guys sitting in their section of that table, Hananuki. Izuku watched as the recommendation student closed his eyes while crossing his arms across his chest. Since the dodgeball game yesterday, Izuku had been eager to get to know more about the softening quirk user, a gesture that had touched Hananuki as he thought that it would take a while for some people to get over how different he looked. But Izuku hadn't been bothered by it, and when he found out that Hananuki was bilingual, able to speak both Japanese and English, Izuku quickly introduced him to Pony, who was happy to meet another person who could speak her native tongue. Finally, Hananuki spoke.
Well, it's only our first day of classes. I'm sure sooner or later you'll get the hang of it. Maybe just spend more time studying. I guess, but I suck at studying. I always get distracted and end up lifting weights or working out.
Tetsu, if you are having trouble, you know you can always ask us for help. We're your classmates. My dad has this saying, one who is truly strong knows when to ask for help.
As Kendo, who was sitting next to Izuku, said this, the orange-haired girl waved a finger in the air. At the same time, Pony, who had been sitting next to Kendo, leaned forward to look at Tetsu with those wide, excited eyes of hers.
Oh, I know. Ask Izuku to help you study. He'll help me improve my Japanese big time. And it made it fun, too.
That caught Tetsu's attention, lowering his hands and looked at Midoriya with hope returning in his eyes.
Really? Can you help? Dude, you'll be a real lifesaver.
Izuku didn't say anything at first, simply putting his utensils down as he adopted a thinking pose. It wasn't that he was against helping out his classmate, as he was eager to have a fresh start and make more friends while on the road to becoming a hero. It was more like he didn't know if he could do the same for him as he did for Pony. He had used his interest to bridge the gap in her education, so could he...
Well, if the problem is just that he gets distracted easily, then maybe studying in a group might be the best solution. More people around him keep him focused on task. But will that be enough? Tetsu did mention the gym and working out. UA does have several gyms that are open to all students after hours. Perhaps we could reserve one of them for an hour or so every night so we can go over what we learned while lifting weights or on the treadmill. Gotta work out and learn at the same time. Might be a problem with our focus so divided, but as long as we don't push ourselves so much, we should get in a good workout both mentally and physically, though...
Is he always like this?
Izuku nearly jumped out of his seat at the sound of Hananuki's voice. Looking around, the Divine Divider saw that everyone was staring at him. Kendo, for example, was resting her head on her fist as she watched his rambling on with a soft smile on her face that caused his cheeks to tint red. Pony had stars in her blue eyes, while Hananuki seemed worried. Shishida had a hand on his chin as he looked at his classmate, his expression almost hidden. And as for Tetsu...
Dude, where were you when I was studying to get into UA? That actually sounds like fun. I can't wait to get started.
Well, before you get too excited, we need to find out if it's possible. We need to talk to the teachers about reserving time at one of the gyms, and we might not be able to get it every day. But I am pretty sure that we'll be able to get some time in the library pretty easily.
Izuku nodded at his orange-haired friend, his body relaxing as a smile appeared on his face.
Right. We should also ask the rest of the class to see if anyone needs any additional help, or at the very least wants to join. We have a group chat for our class, so I guess one of us could post it there and...
Deku!
A half second after the green-haired teen heard that familiar scream of rage, his face slammed onto the table and into his food. Struggling to breathe, the teen felt his body slide across the surface, falling by empty air for a brief moment before finally crashing into the ground. Coughing, Izuku managed to turn so his back was against the floor just in time as the feral visage of Bakugou filled his vision. His brain was still processing what was happening as an open palm slammed onto the side of his face, pressing down with great force. It has been so long since he had been in this position. Not since he first activated Divine Dividing, standing up to his bully for the first time since the playground. For now, taken aback by the suddenness of the attack, Izuku found himself paralyzed with fear. He couldn't move. Thoughts as complex as pushing him off were too complicated at this moment. He could only lay there, feeling like his old self as he stared up at the person who had made his childhood a living nightmare.
You damned, useless nerd, worthless stain. Damn, Deku! Did you think we were done? Did you think I wouldn't see how close you were to my entrance score? With 10 rescue points? Still looking down on me? Trying to make me look bad?
More pressure was added to Izuku's face, squishing it further into the ground. His bones were feeling like they were put into a press with the potential for them to break at any given moment. Only now could he hear movement all around him, shoes squeaking against the floor. But his eyes refused to look away from the angry, red eyes above him, even as spit flew from Bakugou's mouth every time he yelled. There was no mistaking it. Bakugou was beyond angry or livid. He was something else, and it scared Izuku that there could be another level of anger within the teen.
Now you're going to answer my question, you pathetic waste of space? Then you're going to get your worthless ass out of my school. Either by you walking out on your own 2 feet, or in a body bag. That is highly uncalled for. Cease this utterly barbaric behavior, my good sir. Mind your own business, Sasquatch.
Well, we tried to do this the civil way.
The sound of flesh hitting flesh filled the lunchroom as Bakugou was knocked off of Izuku, tumbling into the floor before rolling onto a cross position. Looking over to his side, the teen saw that it had been Itsuka who had come to his rescue, her normal-sized fist still extended. She looked down at the ashen-haired teen with contempt. Then, after glancing back at Bakugou, Izuku saw a large bruise forming, while a trickle of blood escaped from his lips.
You damn extra! If you want to die so badly, then so be it!
Izuku nearly trembled where he was as he saw the flash in Bakugou's eyes. He also noted that the others who had been seated at their table had already risen, determination in their eyes as the silence filled the room. Thankfully, something came in the nick of time to prevent things from escalating. That thing happened to be a long band of some sort of white cloth. They wrapped around Bakugou, pressing the teen's arms against his body as he fell to the ground. Everyone looked up to see, at the other end of the cloth, a man with long, shaggy black hair and glowing red eyes. At the same time, another person came running towards Izuku, which caused a brief surge of panic in the teen. Though he did relax a little when he saw that it was the girl he had saved back in the entrance exam, her eyes filled with concern at what had happened.
Oh my! I saw what happened! Oh, you're right, Deku!
As the other 1B students looked at Uraraka in shock, Izuku felt his heart sink deep into an abyss, tears threatening to form in his eyes as he looked up at her. This was supposed to be a fresh start for a new beginning, that he could go the next 3 years without anyone calling him Deku. Well, everyone but Bakugou. But now, If she was already calling him that, how long till everyone else started calling him useless? He must really look panicked. He was taken out so easily, froze in fear, and needed someone else to save him, some hero in training he turned out to be. Taking a deep breath, Izuku did the only thing that he could think of. Get away from everyone. He was aware he said something, yet the words didn't seem to register in his mind as he got to his feet before charging out of the lunchroom. No doubt everyone was watching him, judging him harshly. But he didn't have the mental worry about that now as he left the room, and only stopped when he got to the first intersection in the hallway. Once he stopped, Izuku bent slightly as he panted while resting his hands on his knees. He could hear Albion trying to talk to him, but his voice was jumbled in his mind. With each breath, he tried to clear it, tried to get his thoughts in order and to think clearly.
I was right about you. You don't belong here.
A sound in Izuku's head vanished when he heard those words. Slowly he turned to see the man who had stepped in, the cloth in one hand as he led Bakugou with him. Now the man's gaze was upon the Divine Divider, giving him a look that Izuku knew all too well. He was being judged.
I saw that pathetic display of yours in the entrance exam. You clearly have little understanding of how to use your quirk properly, and wasting time figuring it out on the battlefield. Did you even practice it at all? The only reason you're still here is that you were not placed in my class. Believe me, I would have removed you on the first day for being a...
Izuku could feel his heart beating faster, his legs becoming shaky as the man continued to glare at him. The words tried and failed to form in the teen's mouth, creating further annoyance in the man standing before him. Said man then took a step closer.
Aizawa, that's enough!
As the words were spoken, the large meaty hand of Vlad King slammed into Aizawa's shoulder. This act had surprised both Bakugou and Izuku, neither of whom even noticed the man approaching, but not Aizawa, who simply turned to give the taller man an annoyed look. For a while, neither man said anything before the dark man began to walk away with Bakugou in tow. Then,
you know I'm right.
And with that, Aizawa walked away from the pair without looking back.
Key.
Not trusting his voice, Izuku nodded his head as he kept his eyes on the small table separating him from his homeroom teacher. The young man just sat on the couch in the teacher's lounge, his standard uniform replaced with his gym tracksuit. He was aware that the door was locked, giving them privacy that did little to calm the teen down. As he heard the tea being poured into their cups, his mind went to all of the worst-case scenarios. No doubt Vlad was going to expel him, like how the other teacher had wanted, just in a calmer atmosphere. Why wouldn't they? The school had just seen how pathetic he handled a sneak attack, followed by the way he had reacted. Clearly, they would say that he wasn't cut out for the hero course if he couldn't handle that. And with Albion now going silent, he felt all the more certain that he was right. Perhaps even the soul of the ancient dragon no longer wanted anything to do with him. Then the tea was placed before Izuku.
I wanted to apologize for what Aizawa said to you. It was certainly something you didn't need to hear after what you just went through. Though harsh, the man means well.
Izuku said nothing as he took up his tea and took a sip, his eyes still downcast. Then, after a moment, he spoke.
Was he right? Is the reason I'm even still here because he didn't place me in his class?
For a moment, silence filled the room. Despite not looking up at the man before him, he knew there was no doubt a war going on in Vlad King's brain. To be honest, lie, or deflect. Then, finally, the man spoke.
It is possible. Aizawa has a bit of a reputation for expelling students that do not meet his standards, regardless of how well they do in the entrance exam. One time, he even expelled an entire class. But despite this, he did not want to expel you.
Midoriya looked up in surprise, nearly dropping his tea as he stared at the man in disbelief. Now he saw that his homeroom teacher was holding the small cup in his hand, looking down at it with his eyes half lit, as if remembering something.
He was critical of how much time you wasted during the exam, how you did not use your quirk right away, and when you did use it, you began flying around out of control. With that said, he was mildly impressed that you managed to get some control over it in such a short amount of time. That, as well as taking down the zero-pointer, without getting hurt or putting anyone else's well-being at risk. So he recommended that you be sent into general studies with the option to be moved into the hero course once you get a better handle on your quirk. However, myself, Principal Nezu, and the other teachers felt otherwise.
The large man then paused to take a sip from his drink. Then, when he looked at Izuku again, there was something of curiosity in his gaze.
Now, I'm sure you know that UA does background checks on all of our students for obvious reasons. Normally, we scrutinize any reported misconduct ranging from quirk misusage to arrests if we require a better understanding of the situation and that said potential student has learned and moved on, then that student is called in so we can question them. Others, we simply discard without a second thought. But perhaps most of us pay a little too much attention to that part and miss other things. Like, for example, both myself and Nezu noticed that you changed your quirk registration almost a year ago, and normally you were declared quirkless.
Izuku nodded before going into the story he had told so many people thus far. How he had discovered that the reason everyone, including himself, had thought that he was quirkless was that his body hadn't been strong enough to handle his quirk. He intentionally remained vague on how he had discovered this, not wanting there to be more bad blood between himself and Bakugou. And, thankfully, Vlad never pressed the issue, nor did he interrupt his student, as he continued the story of how hard he worked to get his body into shape. About how, at the entrance exam, he wasn't 100% sure that Divine Dividing worked on machines, as well as wanting to see what he could do on his own. And that when he did activate his quirk was the first time he had discovered the wings, and, well, the first time he had flown. It was only when Izuku had finished his story that Vlad spoke once more, his voice filled to the brim with understanding.
I see. From what I'm hearing, your quirk is still developing, no doubt due to coming in so late in the game. Well, considering that, I'm honestly a bit impressed that you came so far in such a short amount of time. Now you have me curious to see what you'll be like at the end of the year.
Izuku could now see an almost feral grin on Vlad's face. But unlike Bakugou's feral expressions, this one held less of a murderous glint in the eyes and was replaced with excitement. Seeing it almost flew Izuku through a loop. But before the teen could dwell on it much longer, Vlad's expression softened.
I'm sure it wasn't easy thinking you were quirkless for so long.
It wasn't.
Izuku's words cracked as he began to deny the truth of what it had been like. To dismiss it all like it had just been no big deal. A bit of rain that ruined what was supposed to be a sunny day. But his own voice had already betrayed him, and already the pro hero sitting before him was giving him a look that said he didn't buy that. So Izuku spoke honestly.
Deku, I don't know if anyone told you, but that's the name Bakugou called me. It's the name a lot of people knew me as growing up. Useless. That's how I was made to feel for years. I was mocked for just wanting to have the same dreams as the rest of my class. For just wanting to help people. That's all I wanted to do. Yeah, I was stupid for not working out more if I wanted to be a hero. I realized that a while ago. I eventually did put in the hard work, but maybe I'll always be a Deku. If I freeze up like I did in the lunchroom, unable to fight back, how can I ever to be expected to do the same when I'm fighting a real villain? Maybe Mr. Aizawa is right, and I should just...
Izuku was silenced when Vlad reached across the table to gently place a hand on his shoulder.
Midoriya, you are certainly not the first student I've seen freeze up when taken by surprise. And you certainly won't be the last. I won't hold it against you, especially since you were in a place where you thought you were safe. So, go a little easy on yourself, and we can work on it.
Really?
Vlad King nodded as he removed his hand from Izuku's shoulder, leaning back into his seat as he did so.
Of course. We train our heroes to deal with a number of different situations that happen out in the field. That includes how to deal with unexpected attacks. Now, how are you feeling?
Izuku blinked at that. Slowly, it began to dawn on him that he was feeling better. The panic he had been feeling was lessening, his mind now thinking far more clearly, like how that girl had called him Deku. Of course, she didn't know his name as they had never really spoken. She no doubt heard Bakugou screaming it at the top of his lungs, and for some reason assumed it was his name, hopefully thinking it was his surname or something. Looking back at his homeroom teacher, Izuku saw a sad smile on his face of the blood-themed hero.
I sort of know what you're going through. Believe it or not, I was bullied pretty bad back before starting my hero training.
Again, Izuku blinked at what he had heard while his mouth hung open slightly.
You were?
Vlad King nodded.
A lot of people got unnerved by blood quirks. It's a primal thing to grow uneasy when you see it. 10 times more so when there's a scrawny kid that can manipulate his own blood. Got pushed around a lot, bullied, and called things like that creepy vampire. One day I even found jars of pig blood were stuffed in my locker. The people around me laughed it up and asked if that was my lunch.
Izuku gulped as a question burned in his mind.
Did leaving that place help?
It did. When I started my hero training, I found that most of the people there were more accepting of me. Those that weren't didn't get very far. Most of them never made it past psychic when they graduated. But most of the stuff stuck with me, especially the things they said to me. There would be times when I could almost hear their voices in the back of my head. Then there were times when I would just snap at people when they made certain comments. It's not as easy to escape that kind of stuff. It just seems to haunt you like a goat, appearing and disappearing without a trace.
Can I ask how you were able to get past that?
Vlad smiled, showing off his fangs.
Of course! The first thing I needed to do was admit that what they said hurt. Let it out. Then I found friends I could talk to. Ones I trusted and who were willing to listen to me when I needed it. And finally, I took the names they used to insult me, and I owned them. It's the reason I decided that my hero name would be reference to the inspiration of Dracula. Once I owned it, it took away all the power those people had.
Shortly after that, Izuku Midoriya left the teacher's lounge feeling infinitely better. He managed to head back to the classroom where a worried Itsuka and Pony were waiting for him along with the rest of the class. He was embarrassed, yet glad at the same time to see that there were so many people who were worried about him.
That ruffian attacking anyone when their back is turned is the mark of a coward.
I knew he was bad news. Shroom, I'm just glad he's in 1A. Can you imagine what would have happened if he was here with us? Or if Midoriya was in 1A with him? Shroom!
Izuku smiled at their words.
So, does anyone know what happened to Bakugou? The guy who attacked me?
Itsuko made a face that showed she wasn't happy.
Yeah, Tokage overheard some of the teachers while we were looking for you.
As if to punctuate that statement, Tokugage's eyes and ears separated from her body and began to move around on their own, along with her mouth that was twisted into a sharp-toothed grin as Kendo continued to talk.
According to her, Principal Nezu was curious about the attack and wanted to expel that Bakugou kid, but that jerk Aizawa stepped in and managed to get him a suspension. He'll be back when they start rescue training in a couple of days.
Oh, that's some bullshit! This statement by Awase was quickly shared by the rest of the class. It seemed like too much of a slap on the wrist for attacking another student completely unprovoked. But perhaps there was going to be more to his punishment, like he would be missing something important in class or something. Most of the class even wondered if the reason they didn't expel the jerk was that the school feared unleashing such a ticking time bomb on the world. However, their speculations had to be put on hold as Vlad entered the room, ready to give a lecture on proper heroing laws. The next day, 1B discovered what the angry blonde had missed out on as the door opened and All Might himself almost seemed to soar into the room before landing in front of Vlad's podium. Stars were in Izuku's eyes as he looked up at the #1 hero. He stood there, dressed in his current hero costume, while making a V for a victory sign as a bright smile shone on his face.
Greetings, you bunch of noobs! I, All Might, am here to teach you the ropes in what I call Heroing 101! And, just like our sister class, I will be pulling no punches as we start our battle training!
Drop a comment about your favorite series or suggestions. Thanks to our team for another amazing video. If you're interested in joining our team and you are 16 years of age or older, feel free to check out the link in the description. Thank you all for watching till the end and have a fantastic day.